Somewhere in a quiet suburban kitchen, a 55-year-old man is staring at his laptop screen. He has just finished checking his retirement account. The number in front of him reads $600,000. He worked for this number for over 25 years. He skipped vacations for it. He drove the same car for over a decade for it. And now that he is finally looking at it, staring back at him in plain bad text, his first honest reaction is not pride or it is disappointment. He thinks to himself, I'm still not rich, not even close. Because somewhere along the way, he absorbed the belief that real financial safety only begins at $1 million, or maybe two. So instead of feeling secure, he feels behind. Still chasing, still not enough. Here is the problem with that feeling. If the target keeps moving further away every time you get closer to it, you will never actually feel safe. No matter how much money you accumulate, you could hit 1 million and still feel behind. You could hit 2 million and find a reason to feel like it still isn't enough. But what if there's a specific point, a real, identifiable threshold, where money stops being something you simply pile up and starts becoming something that works for you? A point where the entire relationship between you and your money quietly flops. Before this point, you support your money. After this point, your money starts supporting you. Today, we're going to look closely at why $600,000 might actually be that hidden turning point, and why almost nobody is talking about it honestly. Ask most people how much money they think they need for a comfortable retirement, and the number that comes back is almost always enormous. Surveys conducted in recent years by major financial institutions have repeatedly found that most working adults believe they need well over $1 million, with many estimates landing closer to $1.5 million, just to retire comfortably. Meanwhile, when you look at actual household net worth data across the country, the real numbers tell a very different story. A large share of households approaching retirement age hold nowhere near the amount in savings and investments combined. So you're left with only two possible explanations. Either the overwhelming majority of people are catastrophically behind and destined to struggle in retirement. What the number everyone has been chasing was inflated in the first place. The uncomfortable truth is closer to the second explanation. The $1 million retirement number did not emerge from a careful, personalized calculation of what any individual actually needs to live comfortably. It emerged from a general, headline-friendly figure that spread through media, advertising, and financial marketing until it became accepted as gospel. And once a number like that becomes culturally accepted, it becomes very profitable to keep reinforcing it. There is no shortage of financial products and services designed to sell you on the idea that you still need more, no matter how much you already have. Not because the math demands it for your specific life, but because the constant feeling of not enough keeps people buying, saving through certain products, and delaying the moment they finally feel secure enough to stop and brave. So let's actually walk through the math instead of the marketing. Because there's a real transformation that happens your money once it crosses a certain size. And understanding changes how you think about every dollar you save from this point forward. Imagine $600,000 sitting in a diversified, long-term investment portfolio. Historically, over long stretches of decades, broad stock market investments had delivered average annual returns in a range of around 7%. So this is the long-term historical average, not a guarantee for any single year. And any individual year could be show up with higher or lower. But if we use that long-term average as a general reference point, $600,000 growing at 7% in a single year produces roughly fully $2,000. See with that figure for a moment. Fully $2,000 is close to, or in some cases higher than, the entire annual income of a full-time worker in many parts of the country. And your money generated the amount without you clocking in a single hour, without you sending a single email, without you setting a single alarm clock. This is the first real transformation in the story of wealth. At some point, your money stops being a passive pile sitting in an account and starts behaving almost like an employee, quietly working around the clock, generating value. Will you swipe? Will you're on vacation? Will you're doing absolutely nothing related to earning income at all? For most of your financial life up to this point, the equation has been simple and rat. You work, you earn a paycheck, and that paycheck is the primary engine pushing your net worth upward. Your effort and your wealth move together, almost in lockstep. But there's a second, quieter transformation that happens further down the same road. And it tends to catch people off guard. Because it is not about your money starting to earn something. It's about your money's own growth beginning to outpace your ability to add to it through saving alone. Here's how that shift actually works. If someone is diligently saving $30,000 a year, their contribution is, for a long stretch of time, the dominant force growing their net worth. But once their total invested assets grow large enough, the market's return on the existing pie, even at that same long-term average of around 7%, starts to generate new dollars in a single year than a person's own annual savings contribution does. Using $30,000 a year in contributions as an example, the crossover turns to happen once total invested assets reach somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 or so, depending on exact returns and timing. At that point, marker growth. The new personal savings discipline becomes the primary engine pushing your net worth higher. This is a strange and, for many people, deeply uncomfortable moment. For years, you control the outcome, efforting growth out, direct, reliable, entirely within your hands. But once your assets become large enough that the market to turn out with your own contributions, control shifts. Time and market behavior start to matter more than how hard you personally push. This is genuinely one of the hardest psychological adjustments in the entire wealth-building journey. Learning to trust the system that is now, in many ways, bigger than your own individual effort. And this is precisely where the real danger begins. Because earning this kind of money is difficult, but protecting it once you have it might actually be harder. And there are two very different traps waiting on opposite ends of the emotional spectrum. The first trap is fear. Imagine that same $600,000 portfolio during a serious market downturn, the kind of decline that happens periodically throughout history. A 35% drop is not unheard of during a severe downturn, and on $600,000, that translates into a loss of roughly $210,000 on paper. Now, intellectually, you might understand that markets have always eventually recovered from past downturns. Though of course past patterns are never guaranteed future results. But emotionally, in the middle of that decline, $210,000 does not feel like an abstract number on a screen. It feels like a milestone. It feels like a decade of sacrifice, evaporating in front of your eyes in a matter of weeks. And in that moment of panic, an enormous number of people make the single most damaging decision in all of investing. They sell, they lock in a loss permanently. And in doing so, they miss the recovery that so often follows downturns historically, converting a temporary paper loss into a permanent, irreversible one. The second trend says the opposite extreme, and it is far quieter, which makes it even more dangerous. This is the trap of comfort. Someone reaches $600,000, looks at the number, and thinks, I've made it. I can finally relax now. So they quietly begin pulling back. They reduce how much they invest each month. They loosen their spending habits, telling themselves they range it. They stop reading, stop learning, stop paying close attention to their financial decisions, because the pressure that once motivated them has faded. The tragic irony is that this moment, read when compounding is finally becoming powerful enough to seriously accelerate their wealth, is exactly when many people quietly hit the brakes on their own progress, without even realizing they're doing it. Fit destroys compounding by pulling money out at exactly the wrong moment. Comfort the Screw is discipline by slowing down contributions at exactly the moment they would have mattered most. Both traps look completely different on the surface. One feels like panic, the other feels like relaxation. But underneath, they cause the exact same outcome. Well, that should have kept accelerating. Instead, both are quietly, avoidably, and almost always without the person even realizing what happened until years later. So let's actually answer the practical question sitting underneath all of this. Is $600,000 actually enough to retire on? A commonly referenced guideline in financial planning, often called the 4% rule, suggests that withdrawing a range 4% the portfolio annuity has historically high reasonable chance of lasting through a long retirement. Though this is a general historical guideline, not a guarantee, and it depends heavily on market conditions, how long retirement lasts, and your specific portfolio. Applied to $600,000, That comes out to roughly $20,000 a year in withdrawals, adding a typical social security benefit. And total retirement income for many people could land somewhere in the neighborhood of $45,000 to $50,000 a year, though actual benefits vary significantly based on individual work history and timing. Is that enough, or the honest answer is that it depends entirely on your life. It is very likely enough to support a modest, comfortable, free lifestyle in a lower-cost area of the country. It is very unlikely to be enough to support an expensive lifestyle in a high-cost city, where a retirement filled with frequent international travel and luxury spending. Where you live, where you own, and how you spend would shape the real answer far more than a $600,000 figure itself ever could act on. This is no personalized financial advice for a specific situation. It is simply the general lay of honest way, so you can start asking better questions about your own numbers. Ideally with a qualified financial professional who actually knows your full picture. What all of this really points to is a much bigger shift in how you need to think about money once you cross this kind of threshold. For most of your financial life, the formula was straightforward. Earn more, outsave more. Work harder. Push the number up through sheer effort and time. But once your money becomes large enough to meaningfully generate its own growth, the formula quality changes underneath you. That's actually where most people would stop the video. But if you want to know exactly what to do with this information, stick around for one more minute, because the difference between knowing this and actually using it comes down to one comparison. Picture two co-workers, same wage, same job, same salary, starting doing fast at the exact same time with the exact same amount of money. The first person is what we'll call a reactive investor. Every time the market drops significantly, fear takes over and they move their money into cash, telling themselves they'll get back in once things feel safer. The problem is, things never feel safe at the bottom. They only feel safe after the recovery has already happened, which means this person consistently sells low and buys bargain high over and over across every single market cycle of their life. The second person is what we'll call a boring investor. When the market drops, they do nothing. They don't check their account daily. They don't watch financial news obsessively. They simply keep contributing the same amount on the same schedule, regardless of what headlines are saying that week. Historically, when researchers have studied this exact behavioral gap between reactive investors and passive, with nothing investors over long periods, the boring investor has tended to dramatically underperform the reactive one, not because they were smarter and not because they picked better investments, but purely because they didn't interfere with their own compounding. This is sometimes called the behavior gap in personal finance, the gap between the returns an investment actually produces and the much lower returns real people actually experience because of their own emotional decisions along the way. The single biggest variable separating these two co-workers, with identical incomes and identical starting points, was never intelligence, it was temperament. So here, how do I actually use this? Depending on where you stand right now. If you are still well below this threshold, keep the contributions automatic. So the decision to invest isn't something you have to remotivate yourself to make every single month. Consistency beats intensity at the stage every single time. If you are approaching the threshold, somewhere in the range of $300,000 to $500,000, start paying closer attention to your own emotional patterns, not just your portfolio. Ask yourself honestly, have you ever panic sold during a downturn? Or stopped contributing because things felt uncertain? That is worth addressing now, before the stakes get larger. And if you are already past this threshold, the priority shifts almost entirely toward protection and patience. Revisiting how much risk you're comfortable holding, and deciding in advance, calmly on a normal day, exactly what you will and will not do the next time the market drops 30%. If you're realizing right now what category you actually fall into, that alone is worth something. Drop a comment below and let us know where you stand. Below this threshold, right at it, or already past it. And if this video changed how you think about your own number, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next one.